2026 sees me travel the length and breadth of England to run a marathon per week in each of its 39 historic counties. Why? To raise funds for Tommy's, the charity that does incredible work to try to end the heartbreak of baby loss. I will be joined each week by someone who has their own story of loss, their own rollercoaster journey, their own reason to be there. This podcast shares those stories in the hope that they can bring awareness to an often undiscussed topic and even, perhaps, a flicker of light in someone's darkness. You can follow the runs, the stories, and donate to the cause at marathonsformiracles.com. Enjoy.
Hello, welcome to week 33, Marathons for Miracles. Another podcast, another week. This week we're off to Suffolk, and special treat this week. We have two guests, not just one. Lottie is technically our main character this week, but Rosy very much so as well, which we will learn more about as we talk further. But yeah, off to Suffolk this week following the run in Northumberland. Northumberland is stunning. I think I say this every week that I wasn't really aware of how beautiful the place was that I'd been. I went to uni in Durham, so we used to go up to the Northumberland coast a bit from there. So I had a bit of familiarity, but that stretch from Lindisfarne all around Holy Island, the Holy Island itself was gorgeous. And then the stretch up the coast, big Norfolk vibes, lots of sand dunes, reminded me of home, which was nice. But yeah, just a really, really pretty place to run and another beautiful day. We spoke about it a lot earlier in the year. I think we still only had 2 days of rain out of 33. So thank you, England, for being kind to us. Probably had some days where we would wish it had rained a bit, but look, can't complain. And the big thing for me, I think I've been saying for the last couple of weeks that I can't quite see the finish line yet. And I think the Northumberland leg was a big part of that because in a 24-hour period on Saturday and Sunday, I had 6 hours of running and about 11 and a half hours of driving. So it was pretty brutal from that side of things. I went to see the physio today and he was like, what hurts? I was like, my back and my shoulders. He's like, you sure you ran at the weekend? I was like, no, I just drove. I just drove for a whole day. So yes, another insight into the joys of this challenge. But anyway, we have got that one out of the way, 7 more to go, on to Suffolk this weekend. And as I said, joined by Lottie and her mum, Rosy. Thank you very much for joining us, both for the challenge and for the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Very welcome. Yeah, thanks for having us.
And so just before we get into your story, Lottie, and sort of why you joined in the first place, why have we got both of you? What's happened?
Yeah, so as we'll come to, since signing up in November, we've since had a very successful pregnancy so far. And yeah, I will be 38 weeks by Saturday. So unfortunately, despite my best parkrun efforts throughout pregnancy, I'm not quite up to running a marathon.
No.
So mum was very kindly going to join me anyway, but now I will be supporting and cheering her on.
And was the plan always to do the whole thing, Rosy? Or I can't remember. Was there sort of a half in the offing and then...
It was always to do the whole thing.
Okay, I couldn't remember that it was sort of, I'll do my best and then shit, I actually need to do the whole... I need to do all of it now. But it was always the plan. So, no, it's fantastic. And as we were saying just before we came on, it's really nice to have sort of the mother's perspective. We talk about a lot of difficult circumstances and scenarios and always from sort of the people going through it. But we spoke to a brother earlier in the year, which was a nice insight. But I think obviously, as with everything in life, but particularly with pregnancy, I think there's obviously huge involvement from the mother's side. So it's really nice to see that. So yeah, we'll touch more on that later. But for now, as ever, Lottie, could you tell us what it is that led you to be involved with Marathons for Miracles and with Tommy's and their cause?
Yeah, so pretty much as we've mentioned, like mum and I are super close. I got inspired to start running by mum when she started running later in life, and we'll come back to that later. But we'd always ran together, trained together whenever I used to live home in Stockport where she is. And yeah, I was at medical school, met my husband, and everything was going smoothly as possibly could be, met quite young, got engaged 5 years later, married a couple of years later, had a house that was agreed upon, and then fell pregnant. So everything thought we're going exactly in the
Ticking all
order
the
of
boxes.
life that we wanted it to be. And then within sort of like 4 weeks of finding out I was pregnant, it was like the Christmas holidays and Christmas time. So we were like, perfect, we'll come home, we'll see my family, we'll fly to Germany, we'll see Robin's family, and tell everyone and let them all know the good news. And I remember my dad sort of on Christmas morning saying, oh, you know, should we open the champagne to have with the salmon on toast? And I thought, oh, I can't have champagne or salmon.
Yes.
So, ended up telling mum and dad on Christmas morning, or our sort of equivalent of Christmas, because we're both doctors. So that wasn't actually Christmas Day. And then, a few days later went to Germany, saw Robin's parents, told them the good news. And then I remember we had a New Year's Eve run, signed up for a 10K run in Germany, which was great. It was like our first race sort of abroad together, and Robin saying, take it easy, you know, you're pregnant now. And I thought, this is great. Like I'm like 6 weeks pregnant and don't have any symptoms and feel completely fine. And thought, you know, maybe I'll just have a good pregnancy. Mum had always told me she had a good pregnancy with me. And I thought, why won't it be the same? And then we came home, and I guess sort of like January blues, like back to work, and everything was still feeling normal. And I was like, I should be like 8-9 weeks by now. And yes, I've not had a period, but nothing else has really changed. Like I just felt deep within like something was wrong. And I guess I called the midwives, and they were like, it's your first one, we don't know how it's going to be. Like, I'm sure everything's fine. Like, just keep doing what you're doing, just keep enjoying. And the more time that went on, I guess we just thought, well, if I had have had a problem, it would have ended by now. Like, we would have had some sign. And so every day, every week that passed, we were like, this is reassuring, everything's fine. And then, we got to mid-February, my 12-week scan. And Robin and I both remember sitting there so vividly, seeing everyone come out with their scan pictures with their families, like happy and smiling. And the second we went in the room, we knew something was wrong. They were like, oh, do you mind if we have a student sonographer? And obviously we're like, no, that's absolutely fine. And she scanned us. And my husband works in radiology, so he knows imaging. And like, I'm also a doctor, I've seen lots of scans. And the second they put the probe on my tummy, I was like about to burst into tears. I was like, there's nothing there. There's just an empty sac. And the sort of other sonographer was like, oh, how many weeks are you? You know, not judgmental or anything, but like, oh, maybe you're just a bit earlier than you thought. And I was like, no, like I have very solid periods. I've never missed a period. Like nothing's been feeling right for the last 12 weeks. I'm actually not surprised. And she was like, no, it's fine. Like, we'll do another scan. So I had to have then like an internal scan and a sonographer check. And then a second third by this point, come and check again. And they measured the size of the sac, and they're like, it's not big enough to be 12 weeks, but it's big enough to be able to see something. And there's just nothing. And I just remember like our whole world just came crashing down. So I was like, I've been so stupid, because I've known for like the past 12 weeks something is wrong. We talked about getting a private scan, and I guess in our heads we were like, well, no, because if something's wrong, we'll just end naturally. So we got moved to like a bereavement room, and had a really lovely nurse come and sort of explain everything. And I just completely went into doctor mode. I was like, I used to work in obstetrics and gynecology. Like, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know the plan. I know the 3 options. I know we can wait this out, or have medical, or have surgical. And I was like, I just don't want to talk about it or to think about it. And I called my mum as soon as we got out of the hospital, and I said, it's exactly what I thought. There's just nothing. My dad was like, what do you mean? Like, you're pregnant? I'm like, I'm pregnant, but with an empty sac. And so, I went home, thought about it. This was like a Thursday night. And then Friday, mum and dad came to stay with us. And by Friday, sort of middle of the day, I was like, I just need this out of me. I was like, I just feel empty, and I am empty. And what's the point in waiting? We've waited 12 weeks. And yes, I was still young, still 28. Like, it wasn't like I thought, oh, we're running out of time. But I just thought, no, we really want a baby. And why should I sort of let nature take its course when it's already taken so long? So Mum came with me to the hospital on Saturday, had the tablets, went back on Sunday, had the pessary and thought, this is fine. It's such a small sac. It's sort of 6 weeks by sac size. It will all end normally and we can just be done and move on with our lives. And I started bleeding, thought, okay, good, bleeding and the cramping built up. I thought, okay, this is good. Everything's going right. And then it got to about 4 p.m. and I went to the bathroom and I couldn't even put a pad on. I was just gushing so much blood. And I remember obviously them saying, if you feel more than one pad every half an hour, call us. And again, I'd been in that situation on the other side, counselling women about when to call the hospital and when to go to hospital. But happening to me, I just thought, no, I'm just being a drama queen. Like, I'm sure it's fine. And I remember Mum outside the toilet just saying, are you okay? And I was like, I don't think I can leave this bathroom. There's so much blood. And I eventually called the helpline, the early pregnancy helpline. And they said, you need to come to hospital now. And I was like, no, like, it'll be fine. It'll just sort itself out. It will settle. Like, I can stay at home. And I thought, who can I call? And I've got like an obstetrics and gynecology, like registrar friend. So I called her as a friend and as a doctor. And she was like, you know that if this was anyone else, you would be telling them to go. And she was like, please, like, as my friend, like, just go to the hospital. She was like, the worst they can say is, yeah, it's actually fine, and send you home again and give you like bigger pads or something. She was like, go to hospital. Mum drove me to the hospital and I remember my dad saying, because it was like nearly 6 o'clock, he's like, well, what are we going to do for dinner? And I was like, well, I don't know what time I'm going to be home, Dad. And he was like, you know, completely, we all kind of were unaware at that time, like what was going to happen. And I got to the hospital and Robin was already at the front door at the emergency services and was like, my wife's on her way in. He'd like pre-alerted the area and was like, we need to get her seen. And I went straight into the disabled toilets at the front of the hospital because again, I just couldn't leave anywhere. I didn't have anywhere sort of big enough to hold the amount of blood I was losing. And I eventually everything happened quite quickly, had bloods and cannula and observations. And I got moved to the plaster room, which was the only sort of available side room. Sort of senior house officers, also like, they're not a junior doctor. I hate this term junior doctor, but one of the residents who was on that day came and saw me and she called her registrar. And she was obviously like, I'm worried, like I'll call my registrar. The registrar came straight away, examined me again, and they just couldn't stop the clots and stop bleeding. And pretty much straight away, she was like, we need to take you to theatre, like ASAP. And I was like, no, like it's 1 in 1,000 chance that a medical management's not going to work and you're going to go to theatre. And I was like quoting back to her what we'd been told that morning. And she was like, I'm really sorry, like we're going to have to take you to theatre now. And it was 8 p.m. on a Sunday, which was change over time. So then another registrar had to come. But luckily, obviously, he was like fresh on his shift. And he was just like, we're going now. Probably within 2 hours of getting to the hospital, I was under general anaesthetic. You know, it wasn't their normal gynae anaesthetics team. It was like the emergency surgery team, in and out. And everything just happened like a whirlwind. And the next thing I remember was about 10 p.m. in recovery. And I was like, am I alive? Like, how much blood did I lose? Like, what's happening? And then the next hour, like, Robin was immediately outside the recovery room and I've never seen him so shocked and so like obviously concerned for me. Like one day we're losing our baby and the next day he feels like he's losing me. And that was really hard. And then we got to the ward and we had a side room and like everything was just, you know, as nice as could possibly be. Like everyone was so supportive and gave Robin a recliner chair so he could stay with us. And I remember my mum and dad then were there and we're both upset and just happy, obviously, that I was also alive. And I remember the whole night, like Robin sort of semi-napping in the chair. And I was up and down to the bathroom like 20, 25 times because every time I closed my eyes, I thought, I'm bleeding out. Like I just had this horrible sensation that I was still bleeding and that it wasn't going to stop. And it was like recurrent nightmares the whole of that night. And the next morning, I remember obviously everyone else was on ward round, had slept, and the consultant came to see me and he was like, you know, oh, we're really sorry what's happened. He's like, but you're still so young. I'm like, don't let it put you off. Like, you can try again. And I just thought, I know your sentiment is there, but I'm just so not like ready to even comprehend that. And I ended up avoiding a blood transfusion, but having an iron infusion and then going home the same day. So by Monday afternoon, we were home. And I was like, within 24 hours, how has, my life changed like completely? All the hope and everything we had for that first pregnancy, and then all the blood that I'd lost. And even now, Robin says, that next week being home I'm a very positive person. I'm always smiling, always picking everyone else up. And he was like, that next week, I just didn't know what to do with you. He was like, it's just like I lost you and I lost your soul. And on the Thursday, so about 3 days later, he was like, how do you feel? And I was like, I want to get some fresh air. Running and being out had always been my thing. And I've been on the sofa almost for 4 days. And I remember we were like, we'll just go steady. We'll do like a 3-kilometer run. Hadn't quite realised how much like blood I'd lost and energy I'd lost. And within about a kilometre, my heart rate was like over 200. And I just came home and felt worse because I was like, the one thing I want to do is get out and go for a run and clear my head. And I can't do any of those things. And so I went back to work pretty quickly, sort of like 10 days after that. And I remember coming back to work and everyone didn't know what happened. I was quite pale and just not myself, but still telling myself like, it's my job and I'm fine and I can do this. And it was only sort of in hindsight that a lot of people had said to me, like, you weren't ready. And I just needed something to clear my mind. And then we thought, statistically, we know this happens. Let's try again. What harm could there be? So had sort of the normal bleed you're meant to wait for. And then the next period didn't come and I was pregnant. So it happened very quickly again. I thought, it's happened quickly. It's only been 6 months, like since we ever first tried, like it's completely fine. And again, sort of, you wait and you think, oh, it's 4 weeks, it's 5 weeks. I thought, I still feel fine. I actually then ran like a 5K PB at like 6 weeks pregnant. And I was like, oh no, like this is great for me, but also maybe it means things are not going well again. And then we were on holiday and I had a tiny bleed at like 9 weeks. And as awful as it sounds, I was like so happy because I thought I'll be able to get a scan because I've had bleeding. And it was the same, but worse because Mum had come with, I think Mum was staying with us anyway for a summer trip. And I said, just come with us. So it was the 3 of us. And instead of 1 empty sac, there was 5 empty sacs. And again, like in hindsight, my friends were like, maybe your body was just so desperate to be pregnant that you tried to make like too many babies in one go. And the doctors just didn't really know what was happening. They were like, it's quite odd. We're not sure, like, because each individual sac by that point was not really big enough to determine definitely that there was no viable fetus. But obviously it was an unusual appearance and they had to have like a big sort of multidisciplinary team discussion about it. And then they tracked my hormones for a few days as well. And my hormones were really high, good high, in the normal range high. And then they were falling. And they were like, well, they shouldn't be falling, as I was aware and knew. And then they said, this, whatever this is, whether there was sort of concern about a molar pregnancy, which I know has come up in previous podcasts as well. But it wasn't typical for that. And again, I didn't have the vomiting and I didn't have the sort of exact molar appearance, just lots of empty sacs. And so then even that time, I don't think we were sort of as upset, just more confused. Like, what was happening? Why was I getting pregnant so easily, but not with fetuses, not with pregnancies? And I remember then I saw 2 consultants together who both scanned me and they said, we're going to have to end this pregnancy. And one of them had been involved in the case, like in my first pregnancy. And when the second consultant gave me the option, we've got medical or surgical, the other said, just don't try and have medical management again. Like, we'll just plan very electively to stop this pregnancy and to end it. And again, because it was summer and lists were full and they just said, we won't be able to get you on a list for 10 days and it might end on its own. And all those 10 days, I was again off work, just thinking, just end, just like body, just accept that you're not pregnant. But it didn't. But at least that sort of elective ending was a lot better because we knew it was going to be on that day. And I had all the proper team around and I had the consultant, and it wasn't an emergency and there wasn't all the blood loss. And the physical recovery was much better, but the mental recovery was a lot worse.
Yeah.
Because suddenly it wasn't once, it was, why has this happened twice? And I remember my dad saying again, like, can you just be unlucky twice? And I was thinking, obviously, statistically, you can be unlucky twice. But yeah, but what's happening? And that was really when I started to share the story. And I think that was soon after when you picked up one of the posts that I'd posted, because I just thought the first time I just felt such sort of shame and shock and the physical loss and the emotional loss. And the second time I thought, I can't be the only one just going through this, just not aware of everyone else that this has ever happened to. And I put a post out just saying, look, this has happened to me twice now in 6 months, but actually this horrible part of my life that I've been hiding from everyone, I'm now willing to share. And I just had such an outpouring of love and flowers and messages from sort of, we go to medical school of 300 other people in your year, and someone I'd barely ever spoken to reached out and was like, oh my gosh, I had 3 miscarriages before our baby last year and I've never told anyone. And like, thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, it was just really amazing to have that sort of support and to know that I wasn't alone. And because we'll come on to Suffolk in a moment, but Cambridge was where all of this has been happening. And they were absolutely incredible. And even after the first loss, I was offered bereavement support. And I thought, I don't really need bereavement support. It's a miscarriage and that happens to lots of people. But after the second one, I thought, no, I need to debrief. I need to sort of talk through what's happened. And we were very lucky that they had the sort of 2 miscarriage rule rather than 3 miscarriage rule in Cambridge. And I know from the podcast and from national that, that's not everywhere. So we were scheduled a talk actually on a Sunday in December, because again, they're super busy and amazing service. So this was August, the second miscarriage. And then our talk was planned for December. And in hindsight, that was the day again when I would have been pregnant with our third pregnancy. But I'd done a test and very sort of quickly discarded it and thought, no, there's nothing here. And about 3 days later, I thought, oh, I'm very late now, and did another one. And that's when we're pregnant with now current pregnancy. So it was a very, very up and down week. But the months between August and December was just a lot of figuring out, a lot of, why did this happen? And that's really when I turned, yes, to our midwives and support team at Cambridge, but also to Tommy's. And I started looking at, they have a sort of statistics calculator about if you've had early pregnancy losses and your chance of a successful pregnancy. Because by that point, I said to Robin, I don't even want to try, because I'm just worried how many pregnancies we're just kind of losing, because it's not the getting pregnant that's any problem. It's just that they're not working. Robin had his bloods done privately because that wasn't covered, but mine was all covered through the service. Yeah, so I had bloods done and everything was normal. Again, reassuring, but well, why was there a problem if it's all normal? And yeah, then Robin had his done privately and his were all normal as well. So we thought, well, our blood results are then combined with the Tommy's calculator that actually there's no increased sort of risk of a third miscarriage just because you've had 2.
Yeah.
Was what sort of reassured us and thought, we'll just try again. And it was only sort of the second month of trying that we eventually had this pregnancy.
And now here you are, 37 weeks later. And all.
Yes.
Well, we'll start with the burning question that everyone will want to know. I mean, the fact that you're at 37 weeks is a very good sign, but everything obviously this time has gone okay so far. And
yeah. So obviously, mentally wise, we were so much more reserved this time. I don't know if we told less or more people. I think we probably told less. Definitely less. Like, I remember not even telling one of my best friends. But yeah, it was almost the exact same time of year to the year when the first loss had happened. And I was going on holiday for one of my friend's 30ths. And again, we planned to go for a run. And I said, can we just go really easy? Because I'm not feeling great. And I thought, this is different because I'm only 4 weeks. And why am I not feeling great? And I've only just had a positive test. And then we were home again, saw my parents, were in Germany, saw Robin's parents. And I think it was New Year's Eve because we hadn't signed up for the run this year. And I started vomiting. And I remember Robin's mum coming down like, oh my goodness, are you vomiting? And I was like, yes, I'm vomiting.
Yeah.
And, everything was different. Symptoms were completely strong. And I'd really felt I'm going crazy. Like, I'm making myself sick. Like, I just want this to work so badly that I must be making myself sick. Like, it can't be any different.
I think that's where we've spoken so much over the weeks about navigating subsequent pregnancies after losses, whether that's one or two or multiple as we've had with other people. And I think just those layers of almost like psychosis, all these things that just get you convince yourself of things or you unconvince yourself of things. It's just really hard. It's just really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm so delighted that you are where you are now. But I don't envy you for the last 37 weeks. Like, that's a difficult time to go through. So well done. And obviously,
but again, because we were lucky, because it was like after 2 miscarriages that you could have that extra support, we managed to have a scan at 7 weeks. And I remember, seeing the tiny blob with the tiny heartbeat, and I still call it a blob because absolutely, it was the first time we'd seen a blob in one of the sacs.
Yeah.
Like, there'd always just been nothing. And I remember just being like the most happy I've ever felt. And Robin sort of bringing me down to earth, saying like, yeah, but everything else can still go wrong. But I thought, it kind of doesn't matter what happens from here. We've got to this stage that we hadn't got to ever before.
That's it. That's what I was going to say. It's like where you get to first time or where you got to last time or the best point that you got to, whether that be IVF or a pregnancy or everyone we've spoken to, there's always when you get past when you get to the furthest point where you have ever been, there's always that sense of release and happiness, I guess. Amy and I were very, very familiar with those early scans because she, with her first pregnancy that ultimately miscarried, she had quite a lot of bleeding. So I think we had at least 2, if not 3 scans before the 12-week scan. The 12-week scan was then fine, and then we lost it weeks later. So when we were then in for the second time round, we were at Cambridge as well, and were offered those early sort of reassurance scans, and we saw exactly what you saw and had completely the opposite reaction because we looked at that and went, okay, yeah, cool. Well, we've been there before. We've seen that 3 times and it was fine every time until suddenly it wasn't. So it just goes to reinforce everything we speak about, doesn't it? That it's a very different experience for everyone. It's completely defined and guided by your previous experiences. And like you say, with your first time round, it's an interesting perspective actually, because you've obviously got the medical training and the medical perspective on it, which told you at the time that actually if you were looking at a patient, you would say, not really sure you are pregnant actually. And you're able to have that perspective yourself, but because you've never been pregnant yourself, you've got nothing to compare it to. So you have none of those preconceptions, even with your training and your experience.
And because I'm an only child, the only person I had to ask those questions was Mum. And she had such a smooth pregnancy. She was like, well, no, I never had any symptoms, so you don't need to have any symptoms.
Yeah. And I remember you saying about the app you were referring to do with your baby being the size of various vegetables and fruits. And, we were just going along with it together, weren't we? Because we didn't know any different at that time. But you went from, obviously all that joy and excitement to the next book that you were then reading, which was The Worst Girl Group.
Worst Girl Gang ever.
Worst Girl Gang
Worst
ever.
Girl Gang, yeah.
Yeah, that book's done some mileage in our household, I can assure you of that much.
Yeah.
Rosie, what's your memories and reflections of those times? You're obviously fairly heavily involved both times round. What do you remember sort of observing and feeling?
Yeah, well, for the first time, again, we were just sort of slightly confused, really. I mean, what I remember, obviously, hoping that Charlotte was pregnant, or knowing that she was pregnant in terms of, it says she's pregnant, so she must be pregnant. But as the weeks went on, I started to get a bit of a niggle as well as Charlotte did, so she got less confident and I got less confident. And I remember I was actually on a post-run social with some friends. And I'd already been, and at that point, I'd finally said that she was pregnant because I'll just tell, one or two people and it'll be all right. And then Charlotte rang me and my face just fell and I just ran out of the room. And yeah, it was just terrible. And I just wanted to be there, of course, with Charlotte, because that was the worst thing, really, that I was hundreds of miles away and I couldn't be with her when she really needed me. But yeah, and then obviously it was really difficult with having to go through everything thereafter. But yeah, again, I just wanted to be with her because Cheryl's my only child. She's my only very, very precious child, and I love her absolutely fiercely. And so I just wanted to be able to support her however I could, take her to the hospital, stay with her.
Lottie mentions, I won't call you Charlotte because I'm not your mum.
Oh, you can. It's all right either way.
You mentioned sort of how you always sort of a very happy disposition, and that Robin had those 10 or so days after that first miscarriage where Robin felt like he'd sort of lost you, or I can't remember quite the words you used. Rosie, what's your perspective there? Do you sort of, have you noticed a change in your daughter over the year or so, 18 months that have passed?
Yeah, well, I think to begin with, I think I was completely sympathetic to it being like a bereavement, no matter how far along the pregnancy she was and what the outcome was. This was a loss. And so, you grieve and you are allowed to take that time, sit on the sofa for hours and hours, be numb, cry, find the things that you expect to normally make you happy and recover, not necessarily working. That's all part of the process. I knew it. Yeah, it just took the time it took, and it needed to. But obviously, deep down, still Lottie, still my daughter.
Is this something that you've seen a lot of over the years with sort of friends and family members, or is it a fairly new experience for?
No, new experience for me, completely new experience.
And I wonder,
but the more you've spoken about it, you've also found, you found like close friends who have also now had loss, but you didn't know.
That was gonna be my question. Yeah.
They had kept it from me until I started telling them. I'd tell my hairdresser or another close running friend or whoever, and then I found out more people than I ever knew had miscarriages. And
do you feel that's a generational thing, or are you
I don't know, because for example, my hairdresser is only a few years older than Charlotte, and I didn't know that she'd had any losses. Some people have been a bit older, but I'm not
people
sure.
when you were sort of late 20s, you didn't. I don't think you'd have known if your friends were going through it. I don't think they would have spoken.
No, I don't
about
think so
it
either.
Yeah.
But then I think that's
and I definitely think, even you say about generational, but like I say, I had at least 6 or 7 people after my post that came to me and said, I've never told anyone about it.
Exactly.
I think that's,
and I thought
that's really common, and that's sort of part of what we're we're trying to change, and it's not sort of a forcing people to do it, because it's a very personal thing. But just this podcast as an example, like we've had 3 or 4 people this year who have initially said to me, I'll run with you and I'll fundraise, but there's no way I'm doing a podcast. Like I can't possibly talk about that. And then they've heard other episodes, and they've sort of then said, okay, no, I need to do this. It's important. And the number of people who've said it's like a therapy session, like, and actually going into details that or saying things out loud that they perhaps never said out loud before, or feeling feelings out loud that they never have. And just how, I mean, I know I certainly had it the first podcast I recorded as a guest rather than as I can't bring myself to use the word presenter, but
host.
I can't. But yeah, when I was on the other side of the coin, the one I did with the male fertility podcast back last June time, really hit me for 6. Like I finished the hour and was exhausted, and it was then really quite a pleasant experience. The next morning, woke up, felt 2 tons lighter, But I'm delighted to hear that you've been chatting your way around Cheshire, Rosy, and getting people to open up about their experiences as well. It's exactly the point of what we're doing. So yeah, no, that's brilliant.
I guess that's how Robin and I felt when we had the bereavement support nurse in early December, that yes, I'd opened up about it sort of on Instagram and had messaged people about it. But it wasn't until December till we had like an hour support call, basically, with the bereavement nurse and Robin and I both being together, that we could talk through everything. And that was both on a practical, okay, here's what happened. Maybe this is why it happened. And, let's talk through lifestyle and let's talk through blood tests and everything practically, but also on how are you now feeling? And do you want to try again? And how can we support you through that trying again, really? And yeah, I think the funding for that role has now been taken. And it just broke my heart to hear that, because that hour we had with that incredible nurse and midwife and sonographer, and she does everything, was just invaluable, because Robin doesn't open up that much either. And just for him to be able to and sort of process it in like a practical way as well was so, invaluable.
There's definitely a comment to be made about Germans there, but definitely fulfilling a stereotype there. But then he's probably fulfilling a male stereotype as much as a German stereotype. So
half German stereotype.
I think that's why, just half German, half American. They love to open up about everything.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, I think that's why Tommy's also really helped, because he's such an academic and such an intelligent man that seeing sort of statistics and, his concern was, well, if we try again, what is the probability that, we will end up back at square one? And I was like, actually, 2 first trimester miscarriages is not going to increase our risk of having a third, and we can try again. And they were seeing it sort of statistically laid out on the Tommy's website, that he was like, okay, let's try.
I don't know if you remember back to my mate Tom, who I ran with in Durham. I don't know if you listened to his podcast, but I think Robin should have a listen to that one. I think they're 11 and they get on well.
No, he's heard them all.
Mr. Data.
But shame to hear that role's now been defunded, but such is life in our health service at the moment, as I probably don't need to tell you, Lottie, of all people. But as again, we've learned over the weeks, these are the sorts of roles. I guess if we were going to choose where we spend the money, I'd rather spend the money on the doctor that was doing your surgery when you were bleeding all over the place, and if we lose the periphery stuff, then we'd rather not. But that's naturally what the money's going to be spent on, isn't it? But I think, as ever, this is where the role of the charities really comes into play. And I've been seeing these articles this week about millionaires volunteering to pay more tax. I think if you want to pay more tax, forget about it. Then give it to Tommy's. Give them my number. I've got a fantastic link on my website, highlighted in pink, where they can send as much tax as they want, and it will do a whole world of good, because it's those, if you didn't have access, as you perhaps now wouldn't have access to that bereavement service within the NHS, I'd like to think that someone sensible would give you a leaflet with Tommy's phone number on, and you can ring their helplines, and they are open
Exactly.
all the time, and you can have that conversation. So yeah, moral of the story, go to the website, send us some money, donate now.
Exactly.
On your first miscarriage, Lottie, just again, I never pretend to be a doctor. You don't have to pretend to be a doctor because you are, but what had gone wrong there? And I guess the point behind the question is the thing we hear about first trimester miscarriages, and how you find out that it's no longer viable, you have a bit of bleeding, week later you're absolutely fine. Once again, that clearly was not the case. What actually went wrong? Why was there so much bleeding? Does anyone know why there was so much bleeding, or is it just again in one of those things in pregnancy?
Yeah, so I think combination of things really. So there were still pregnancy hormones and kind of keeping it going. And then, as we were told again by a lovely American nurse when she was counselling us, at this size, 1 in 1,000 will end up going to emergency surgery, or not emergency, but needing surgery. And especially all the other 999 will pass, the medication will work. And I just thought, yeah, that seems sensible. Like, go home, have my tablets, have my bleeding, and then move on with my life. And basically, probably because I hadn't had a pregnancy before, my cervix was just closed. So even though the tablets were sort of pushing to end the pregnancy and get the tissue out, the actual os, the sort of tiny opening of the cervix, just wouldn't open to let things pass, which again is uncommon, but not unheard of, 1 in 1,000. So that's why the surgery was needed, just to open it up. And it was sort of like a rock behind a stream. There's no harsh things happening anymore. It's just very gentle. But actually very minimal bleeding afterwards. It was very easy recovery once that sort of gush of the blood had stopped. So that's my understanding. Again, I'm not in obstetrics anymore, but that's how it was explained to me, and that sort of makes sense.
Do you think you could work in obstetrics whilst going through a pregnant? Do you think you could do it whilst being pregnant at all, let alone having had sort of the roller coaster pregnancies that you've had? I'm sure people must do it, but
yeah, exactly. Again, this is why, we're representing Suffolk. So I did my obstetrics and gynecology training for 4 months, just as part of a foundation sort of program, rotations at West Suffolk Hospital in Bury St Edmunds. Had the most incredible team, the best 4 months of my life in terms of those sort of rocky training years. Definitely that was the highlight. Just worked with incredible doctors, many of whom had children, many of whom were pregnant. And I was 24, 25 at that time, as the sort of junior doctor at the time. I remember going to A&E and also counselling people on the other side of needing medical management, needing surgical management, sort of second trimester losses as well. And I empathized with them at that time, and obviously had no experience of ever being pregnant, but I saw how deeply affected these people were, and obviously often on weekends and on night times when there's not that other support staff, and they've just got me sort of trying my best to make them feel better. And I just worked with incredible people, and even from that team, now I know that some of them had losses. And I knew at the time one of my good friends who was like a registrar trainee, she was just not getting pregnant. So the whole 4 months I was with her was trying, and obviously that was only 4 months. But then when I heard more of the story, it was years and years. And now she's got a beautiful baby girl, and they've actually had a miscarriage as well since then. But I remember asking her, how are you doing this job supporting people through all their successful, healthy pregnancies when you're like so internally struggling? But you do as a doctor. You just sort of put your work hat on and put your day hat on. And I just have such a different experience of that now. And if I were to go back into that job, I think I'd have even more empathy if possible.
I could see that sort of once you've got your baby, which hopefully you will in a couple of weeks' time. I think we've got another friend who works in social services essentially, and sort of supporting families in difficult circumstances to sort of put plans together to help with their kids and all sort of thing. And she had to change job after having kids, because she's like, I now am I can't detach myself from my work. Like, I now see this through a mother's eye, and basically just want to take all of the kids home with me, because I'm like, you can't go back there. I can't leave you here, sort of thing. And she's had to. So I sort of, I don't know. I take my hat off to anyone who can work in that environment, going through that period. And obviously, you hope that a miscarriage journey or a journey of multiple losses is going to not last for a particularly long period of time, but there are people for whom it goes on for years and years and years, and
Exactly.
I couldn't be a midwife or a obstetrician, or it's just phenomenal people. As you said, there's people there doing it every day.
Yeah, they're incredible.
How has the pregnancy been? And I guess that question can go to both of you, actually. Like, have you been able to enjoy it, Lottie? Have you been able to enjoy it, Rosy? Rosy, have you seen the elements that you enjoyed about being pregnant and seen Lottie sort of ignore them and gloss over them because there's too much worry there and too much stress? Or how have you found it all?
Do you want to
Who
go
wants
first?
to go first?
Yeah, no, I think from my point of view, this time has been completely normal, really. So, you have had sickness, you have really glowed, you have, once you got all your energy back again, gone out and carried on doing all the things that you've loved doing. So far she hasn't stopped running, which I'm amazed about in some ways, but on the other hand, she is who she is. So, it's been lovely to see you blossom through this. And we've had such a lovely time, haven't we? It's just been joyful, really.
Yeah, I think, I've, as much as obviously the worry has crept in, and I've, like I touched on before, there's every step thinking, oh, but this could still happen. And actually being part of the loss community and part of Marathons for Miracles and hearing everyone else's story, you're constantly thinking, gosh, but you could still lose in the second trimester. You could still have a stillbirth, like all of these things could still happen. But actually it's grounding myself and it's reassuring myself that no, if we skip out November 24 to November 25 and we just take away that whole 12 months of change and sadness and sorrow, and if we'd have started from this pregnancy, then everything has been to the buck. I know that this is an area where there's no evidence for running in pregnancy, which also drives me crazy. But I think sometimes I'd felt maybe slight judgment from sort of greater family and friends as to maybe you shouldn't be running in your pregnancy. Maybe that had an impact in your miscarriages. It categorically didn't. Like, that would have happened whether it, and it's just listening to your body, because this time I was like, I couldn't run for 12 weeks because I felt so awful.
In a strange way, your second loss has perhaps, feel free to tell me I'm an idiot, by the way, but your second loss has perhaps almost helped in a way with this third one, because your first two were so seemingly quite similar in like how you were feeling and how you felt about the both pregnancies, that this one was so markedly different. That it's because I know Amy had it with her too, the second time round. Yes, there were worries, yes, there were concerns, but number two was so completely different to number one that you're like, okay, that was wrong.
Exactly. Like I say, we've never been so happy that I was so sick and so vomiting.
Yeah.
So it felt so different, but I also want to reassure anyone listening that that also has no correlation, because since I've spoken to someone else who's had 3 healthy children and 2 miscarriages, and through her 5 pregnancies, she's never had any symptoms at all. So she was like, whether you have symptoms and are pregnant, or don't have symptoms and have empty sacs, or vice versa. It really doesn't have any correlation. But for me, it definitely was just
I think
different.
it perhaps just does on a personal level, doesn't it? If everyone's different.
But yeah, like I say, if this was the first, A, obviously I would have never found you and this channel. And B, I would have just been like, well, everything was fine for mum, so everything's fine for me.
Yeah. So you did find us and you did agree to run a marathon, and then you've since
I did.
probably
I remember having that first ever conversation with you saying, oh, it is still 9 months away and we are kind of trying.
Yeah. And it's all come true. So
and I didn't tell you for ages, because obviously in my head I was like, well, no, I was still running, like still something's going to go wrong, like, and I'll be back to running again by the things have gone wrong, and I'll be, so we didn't really dream to believe it until at least March. And then I was like, right, Mum, you're going to have to go and run a marathon for me.
And here we are. It's arrived. It's happening on Saturday. How are you feeling, Rosie?
Excited.
Yeah?
Nervous.
Have you run a marathon before?
I've never run a marathon before.
Okay. What's your, outside of training, I know you've done some longer runs in recent weeks, but where would you have been sort of before all of this?
If I wasn't training for the marathon, I would have done a 5-mile run at the end of August on Bank Holiday Monday. That would have been the next thing I probably would have done as a race. I would have mostly have done, 5s, 10s, maybe 5 miles.
We talked about the Chester metric, didn't we, Mum? That was going to be your next step, like a 26 kilometre.
Yeah.
Oh, a metric marathon. Yeah. Okay.
So you can.
They do we have a half in Shrewsbury, and they do a metric half. So 13K.
Yeah.
So
for Chester, you can do all 3.
Okay, because the Chester Marathon is a big event, isn't it? It's a fantastic.
Yeah. So there's this special, super fancy medal that you can get, and I wasn't really going to do anything, and then I've talked with a friend who said she was doing the Chester half as part of the triple, and because the day that the Chester half was on was the day after. I'm a cellist, and so is my husband, and it was the day after a concert that we were playing in. So my husband was not going to drive me to Chester at crack of dawn, but this lovely friend said she was driving over, so I went with her, and we both did the Chester half together. Middle of May.
You speak of medals. When I ran the Shrewsbury half a couple of years ago, Amy did the metric half, and we both got the same medal. I've never been so pissed off in my life. That's utterly unreasonable. I nearly had to write a letter, but it's but no.
It's like last year April I did the Westport half marathon, and regardless of whether you do half or the whole thing, again, all the t-shirts, all the medals, it's all exactly the same.
It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. But very pleased for you, obviously, that you've got this lovely medal, this lovely t-shirt. So you've done
That's one of the things people didn't understand about doing Marathons for Miracles on Saturday. Was all Mum's running friends were like, oh, come show us your t-shirt, come show us your medal. And she was like, it's my first marathon, I've got like nothing to show for.
Oh, you got a t-shirt?
Yeah, I've got a t-shirt. I've been wearing my t-shirts and my training runs.
Got a t-shirt.
Motivation. Well, I've got my shoes specially for the marathon, and I thought, well, I better wear them a bit, so they're a bit worn in a little bit before the day. And now I'm thinking, maybe I've worn them too much already.
No, they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, but training's gone well. So the step up from a half to a marathon, have you enjoyed it, or are you regretting?
I've been so lucky. I've had some
resenting your daughter.
I've had some really supportive friends. People who've said, "Yeah, let's go at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Monday," and then I've got my day job. Yeah, thank you very much. So it's been fantastic. Yeah. Really.
Brilliant.
And you've had your training plan that you've stuck to
Yes.
like regimentally.
I did. So Charlotte's lovely friend from her local Cambridge running club made me a plan, and she said, did I want it, a loose plan, or is how tight did I want it? And I said, well, just give me the plan and I'll have a look. And like Charlotte says, it's like, okay, on a Monday it says you have to run this distance. The only way we're going to do it and fit the rest of my day in is start at 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, off you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I miss training and hour-long runs rather than 4 or 5 hour-long runs, but I don't miss the 6 o'clock wake-ups too much. So, and now that we've got, at the time when I was training, we're very fortunate. We had a 18-month 2-year-old as a girl who went to bed at 7 o'clock and woke up at 7 o'clock, and we didn't hear a peep from her. Now we have a 6-month-old little boy who does like to wake up every now and again. So 6 o'clock alarms are not our friend anymore. So, yeah, no, I'm pleased to be doing it this way around. But yeah, no, it's a big undertaking, and it's a big undertaking for anyone. And I don't mean this. I don't want this to come across as rude in the slightest. But at your age, Rosie, it's incredibly impressive. I do not know many people. My parents are your age, and Amy's parents are your age, and certainly none of them are running marathons. So yeah, no, it's unbelievable. So. Where are we going? What are we doing? And we've having not had a single response from a single newspaper for the last 4 months. I think we've got the entire Eastern press coming to see us off.
Go ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you get the headline right.
So we're going to Morstan Hall Health Club, courtesy of my good personal trainer friend and dance friend Ella. So she's bringing some club friends, and also anyone can park there. So anyone coming to support can all park there. We have a base and a hub, and we'll sort of loop back through there as well. And there'll be kind of an aid station and means more support. And just a great practical starting place. So we're going to convene around 8 o'clock. For hopefully around at 8:30 set off. We, like I say, I think 2 newspaper/radio companies are coming. They've asked for sort of a telephone interview call with Mum on Friday as well, beforehand, and then we'll hopefully get some group pictures all together on Saturday. And then I like to call it a clover-shaped route, a 4-leaf clover for luck. So kind of going out to Thurston and then up to Fordham, I want to say, and like in each direction, basically, of the 4-leaf clover, and running past West Suffolk Hospital, which I did a lot of my first training for my first marathon during my obs and gynae block. So lots of training around West Suffolk, and it'll be really nice to be back there, and I'm sure we'll get some support from there as well. And then finishing back at the health club.
Great.
Yeah.
So
we are towards the Cambridgeshire side of Suffolk, just in case baby decides to come on that day and we can get back to the Rosy in time.
Very wise. And as you say, it's what I'm not ashamed to say that by the time you signed up, we didn't have many counties left. So we were scratching around a little bit for somewhere. And actually, I think you'd said to me, we'd almost sort of written it off, I think, initially, hadn't we? And then I posted something else, and you said, "Oh, I wish I could do something." And I said, "Well, have you got a link to Suffolk?" And you said, "No, not really." And then you messaged me a couple of days later. It's like, "Well, I did train at Bury Hospital." I was like, "Yes, done, sold, really."
Yeah, and like I'd forgotten, I did all my marathon training around there because I was
fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. As I said previously, we're sort of back across my side of the country this week, because it's always nice to be in the east. Feel at home there. It's not a million miles from where I grew up, and it's very close to Cambridge, where we had our kids and where we lived in Essex. And so hopefully we'll get some supporters from my side as well. So yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to do the recording this evening and to share your stories. And every one that we share is equally as invaluable as all the others. And great to have both perspectives. And yeah, really looking forward to running with you on Saturday morning.
Thanks
Me
so
too,
much,
thank
Lottie.
you.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes.
Bring the troops.
Yeah. See you soon.
See you
Okay,
soon.
see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Right, just